Well, we're back, and we have some news. It's gonna be difficult to say at this juncture what I really feel about this trade, but I'm gonna do my best. Welcome back to the podcast. Hope everyone is in for a doozy because we have gotten word that Brandon Nimmo has been traded. We're gonna get into it. Let's roll the music. Welcome to the Mike's METS podcast. I'm your host, Mike Pashota, and this is going to be a tough one. So first, welcome back, I apologize for spending so much time away. I'm trying to take time to kind of focus on some other stuff that's been going on, mostly with my professional life, but also personal life. So I've been working on that, and I've been working on upgrading certain aspects of this podcast, such as, for one, video. We've improved the video quality thanks to a gift I got myself for Black Friday, which was a 4K camera for the laptop, which was on sale. So good shopping by me. The other thing is working on some of the other post-production aspects of this podcast, which I'm trying to get better at. I still haven't gotten the whole grasp of it, but I'm doing this, kind of with minimal assistance. So just bear with me while I work all that stuff out. But let's get into what we want to talk about, which is the big news. The Mets have traded longtime outfielder and fan favorite Brandon Nimmo. Nimmo, who is 32, is going to the Texas Rangers. And the deal, which we are still getting the word as to what exactly was dealt in this trade. I'm keeping an eye on Jeff Passan updates, but the main return thus far for Nimmo has been second baseman Marcus Semien, and I understand why they're making this trade, which is David Stearns has made it very clear in multiple interviews that his main focus this offseason is on improving the defense and improving the pitching. And acquiring Semien definitely does something for your defense. He is, without a doubt, one of the better second basemen in Major League Baseball today. He won a Gold Glove, most recently in 2025, for his defensive work with the Rangers. That is his second Gold Glove. He is, even though significantly older than Nimmo, he is 35 to Nimmo's 32. He still comes with him, immense defensive ability, and that is something that they desperately needed, especially in that infield where Francisco Lindor just had his worst defensive season, I think, of all time, and they needed some additional assistance. And this is not to say that guys like Luis Angel Acuna or Jeff McNeil were bad defenders, but they needed a real professional in there, a veteran who could help stabilize that defensive middle infield. And I am looking forward to seeing that middle infield with him and Lindor, and everything that they can do, the range, the turning double plays, all of that should be really great to see. And if I'm going to make another pro for the trade from the Mets perspective, would be Nimmo's contract isn't good. It was a horribly, it was without a question a deal that David Stearns never would have signed because Nimmo was already turning 30 when he signed the deal. It was going to be a situation where he was going to be aging into his late 30s with the team and still making like $20+ million a year. It was a horrific trade, one that was of the time, 2022. People were just like, yeah, sure, just sign him up and give him 8 years. Everyone knew it was going to age badly, and honestly, we're well into the aging badly already because Nimmo, while a really solid like role player and a guy who was, I think, a good clubhouse leader, and a veteran, and people like him, and there's a lot of good things about Brandon Nimmo. He is like very quickly approaching the end of his prime, like, and in a way that's like much faster than someone like Francisco Lindor or really anybody, even Jeff McNeil. I think, even though I don't think McNeil has aged particularly well into his 30s either. Nimmo's has not gone well. He's been shifted around the outfield. They've had to move him from right to center, to left field now, and if you watch Nimmo in left field, it's kind of an adventure sometimes. He's not the most graceful. He's not the most athletic guy, and because he's dealt with a lot of like lower leg injuries these last couple seasons, there's always that like, oh, he may not be able to field even this position for much longer. And moving him to DH is a realistic possibility, but there's also the fact that you have other guys, like someone like Pete Alonso, maybe might be moved to DH if he's resigned, or Juan Soto, the eventual, I mean, much sooner than later, most people would hope, is that the Mets were going to move Soto to DH full-time also, or maybe a less defensively challenging position, maybe like left field or first base with Soto. But if Nimmo's already taken up that position, and again he was signed for many years, it's a problem in terms of keeping him available. And you do that kind of trade if you're really going to be focusing on improving the defense. And one move this could lead to is if Nimmo's gone now, then you have an opportunity to either call up one of your outfielders, someone maybe like Carson Bench might be more suited to left field than maybe center field, or if they were going to go this route also, currently waiting in free agency is Cody Bellinger. And Bellinger, center fielder by like name, not really one by trade anymore though. This is he's not somebody who I would necessarily want manning center field. I think he could do it capably. I think he's a fine center fielder, and what we saw from him last season was okay. But he's better suited to the corner outfield positions, particularly left field. His arm's better suited for it. His range is better suited for it. And so if they were going to go that route, and I really like Bellinger. I was very pleasantly surprised by like how well he performed under that microscope, playing in front of Yankees fans. I thought he was going to eat him alive. I thought he was going to do terribly, and I was sorely mistaken. He came through with a really good year, and he's young, younger than Nimmo, I guess. But this is a guy who is defensively capable and has positional versatility. This is a guy you can move really around the outfield, even play center field if you really need him to play center field, or first base if you really need him to play first base. And that kind of positional versatility is very interesting to me, and I think interesting to David Stearns. I think he's looking very interestedly at a Cody Bellinger, and his priorities of course is re-signing guys like Edwin Diaz, and he's been checking in on Pete Alonso, but I don't feel like Stearns has really in on the Pete Alonso thing, unless Alonso is amiable to a positional change over to DH much sooner than later, and that really kind of limits like what you can do with that kind of guy. And so if this is like the first domino to kind of fall of like Stearns really dismantling the old unit of if Alonso goes into free agency and signs with another team, and he's traded away Brandon Nimmo. Jeff McNeil appears to be a guy that might be being traded also. Kodai Senga's name has come up in the trade market. So there are a lot of guys being sort of floated around of the old guard that they are looking into moving away from this team. And if Stearns is trying to kind of build a new unit together, it's built more around Lindor and Soto and on exciting young prospects like Carson Bench, but also Noel McLean and Joe Tong, and focusing on those guys. It's you need to kind of tear down what was old and replace it with what is new, and it's a bold choice. My first thought was this is not a good trade because I was looking at it and saying they got older, and they got a guy who is offensively not performed well the last 2 years. Marcus Semien has not has an OPS under 700 the past 2 seasons. He is still a pretty good power hitter for the position, and you're not going to find a second baseman with 20 home run power. So there is that, but his batting average has dropped significantly. He's not really making good contact, and you really have to wonder how many more quality years that they can get out of him as a starting player. He's played a lot of games. He's been known as sort of an Iron Man for everywhere he's gone, whether it's been Oakland or Toronto or with the Texas Rangers most recently. He's a guy who plays a lot of games. Last year he didn't play full season, but still played over 100 games. So there's the question as to how much longer they can really get out of him here, and his contract extends for another couple of years also up until 2028. So you have to wonder if they are in this lately, if this is really that much of an upgrade for them in terms of we traded away one bad contract, but we got back another one, and it's not for as many years, and they could probably still navigate their way around it. But the real improvement that you got here is Semien's defense, and he's 35. How much longer can he really continue playing at a defensive position that is very requires a lot? It's a very demanding position, playing second base, and he won a Gold Glove, but I don't know how much longer he can continue playing like this. Maybe a year or two, but it's a deal where you're trying to extract yourself from a long-term contract that's not going to age well, and you've entered into a long-term contract right now with Semien that's already not aging well, but you're trying to get the last bit of good baseball out of him, and it's a risky trade. What we know from Stearns already during his tenure has been he makes bold moves. They don't always work. We saw that last offseason. Signing Frankie Montas and then that whole thing imploding. That was a risk. But you don't really know how these things are going to play out exactly. You kind of have to take your best guess. And this is a gamble. Don't let anybody tell you different. Being in a Mets front office or any kind of front office really, in any sport, you are gambling, and these gambles are oftentimes we feel like your livelihood. So it's even more so than a professional gambler going to Vegas or something. You're really betting on what you have here, and you're willing to bet your job in some cases on the fact that you might be making a trade or making a signing that may not work out for you. And Stearns has had some successes, he's had some misses. We don't know how this one's going to play out, and certainly it's not going to be popular with anybody who's related to the Met fan base. Nimmo was really popular. He was, and if they lose, they've traded Nimmo now, and if they lose Alonso, there's going to be a lot of people who are not upset, who are going to be upset and not happy with the direction that they see the team going, and this sort of perceived notion that Stearns is really starting to destroy the culture of the clubhouse, which is, I'll say this, they don't really have a clubhouse culture as of last season. It was kind of a mess. It was very similar to 2023, and they didn't have as many good vibes going for them, and sometimes that's important. In terms of momentum, it can be a big thing. We saw that play out, how everything kind of nosedived in the second half of the season, and everybody was sort of pointing fingers and saying, well, this was on Mendoza. Well, it was on Jeremy Hefner. Well, no, it was on Eric Chavez. And everything just kept going around and around and around like that. And I don't know I don't know if right now how this is going to impact the fan base. In the future, we'll see how that's all going to go down. For right now, it's a short term good idea for the Mets to improve their defense, but long term, looking beyond 2026, I really don't know. It's a contract that's not going to end well for this team. They're going to have Semien just kind of floating around, making $20+ million a year, and you got to hope that his glove is still viable by the end of that contract, or else then this is I don't really know what they got in this case. So if it frees up positions, not having Nimmo in left field or playing DH or doing anything like that, and you've improved your infield defense definitely by a lot with the addition of Semien, but I don't know what the lineup, Semien and Nimmo, it's not really close the last 2 years. Who's been the better player offensively? It's been Nimmo, but we are as of right now not sure how this is going to play out so far. So, going back to the David Stearns trading Brandon Nimmo for Marcus Semien, and I was wondering what it was going to look like from the fan perspective, and already it's looking not great. So I'm just scrolling through various social media, and people are just posting stuff up. What are you doing, David Stearns? People are from Danielle McCartan from WFAN on X, putting up the comparison from StatHead of Brandon Nimmo and Marcus Semien's stats. And as I said, it's not even close. It's there is no question that Nimmo had a much better 2025 season from offensively than Marcus Semien. Notably, even though Nimmo played in more games and across the board, had better offensive stats, batting average, on base percentage, slugging, OPS plus. Hits, home run, whatever you name it, Nimmo had better. According to Baseball Reference, anyway, Marcus Semien had the better WAR still, and that's because of his defense. And that's really what this trade was for, more than anything. We also got word that just now, in order to approve the trade, Nimmo had to sign off on it, and he did have a no trade clause in his contract. Another indication that this was a really bad deal that the Mets signed. Why was Brandon Nimmo have a no trade clause? But he did approve the deal that sends him to the Texas Rangers, and it is a 1-for-1 deal. There is no kicker being added in here of a prospect or anything else being in here. It is strictly we're dealing you our guy. We're sending you a guy off in exchange. So it's. It is very Nimmo to do that. I think that he would approve the trade because I'm sure it killed him. I mean, he's been a member of this organization since he was 18 years old. I remember when they drafted him, and I remember thinking they drafted a guy from Wyoming. Why? But Nimmo really turned into a great player. I'm just going to kind of like give my thoughts now about Brandon Nimmo, which was I remember when he was coming up. And me and my brother like salivating about what an on-base machine he was, because even in the minor leagues, he had established himself as this guy who was going to walk like 100 times a season and had this innate batting eye. Had people thought like power that was going to develop over time, which it did, but he was always going to have those on base skills, and we were just like mesmerized about the fact that like, oh wow, like because he came up around like the time that Wright was leaving around 2017, 2018, and really became a member of the team going into that 2019 season where he was entered spring training, and that's when we were like, okay, this guy like has it, like he's going to be a big star going into the 2019 season where he was drawing walks, he was getting on base, he was coming through with base hits. He had an enthusiasm that would stick with him his entire career that we were really excited about, and we were just really hyped about the young core that was developing with him and Alonzo McNeil and having all those guys in there around that time, around that 2019 season, where we thought, okay, well, we have a good young core. We're going to build around this, and that'll be what we need to get to the World Series, is building a core. That's how most teams do it, and we have that core. And we thought Brandon Nimmo was going to be a big part of it. He became a very different player than the one I initially thought it was going to be like. He kind of navigated away from those on base skills. Even the last like 2-3 years, he's been more focused on hitting for power, striking out more, not walking as much. And even if you look at his on base percentage from 2025, I just mentioned that he far outshined Semien, but his on base percentage wasn't great. Like he didn't have a fantastic year by any stretch. Like it was a good solid year, where if you're looking for 25 home runs and 90 RBIs, Nimmo's your guy. But he's 32. He's going to be turning 33 very soon, and doesn't really have. Like, we don't. I really don't think he has that much left in him. But it's been a remarkable sort of like set in terms of like, oh wow, he's really become a very different player than the one I remembered. And I was thinking about that all through 2025, watching him just kind of like playing with some gingerness in left field. He wasn't always very aggressive, and there were times you could tell like he was like very outmatched in terms of his athleticism. He just wasn't able to be out there, even playing a less physically demanding position like left field. You could see that he just wasn't really keeping up with it as much as he used to, and I think his mid 30s are going to hit him really hard, and you're going to see that guy playing a lot of DH in Texas. For Texas, the trade is, I guess, okay for them. Also, I mean, like as I just said, if you're looking for a middle of the order power hitter who can provide 25 home runs, 90 RBIs, that's great. I don't really know what Texas is doing for the most part. It's kind of just been a sort of like a scattershot like situation like the last like 3 years or 2 years since they went to the World Series. I don't really know what they're doing. It's just been kind of a mess. And this was a trade that I didn't see really the Mets doing this kind of trade. The one that I was thinking about might be happening with the Mets and Rangers would be for Corey Seager, who was signed the same offseason as Semien was. And acquiring Seager was the much more lucrative option, I thought, for the Mets, and one that Stearns would find much more appealing because bringing in Seager, who's a shortstop by trade, but could very easily transition over to third base, bigger guy, a good arm, and a much more physically imposing offensive player, a guy who's done a lot more than Semien has the last 2 years, Seager has. So I would have been much more interested in them doing that trade, but going back to what they're doing, it does feel very Stearns to be like, okay, well, if we're going to get the best defender that's available right now, we're going to, and it might be older, might be on a bad contract, much like Nimmo, but he improves our defense, and that's what we really need to be focusing on. And my brother is just texting me and saying it makes sense in a very unsentimental way. And that like jives very much with what Stearns is doing, pretty much, which is to say that he doesn't really care about like the relationships that have been built with previous regimes. Like he's not really focused on that stuff. He doesn't want to be giving out contracts for sentimental reasons, which is why I don't think Alonso's coming back at all. But trading off Nimmo, I think like he did without really any kind of trepidation. Like he was like, yeah, whatever. Like he's getting older, and it's not going to work out really well, and he doesn't help our goal right now, which is improving the team defense. So, while Nimmo was a really fine role player, he's not a guy who is going to really kind of like. He's not going to move the needle really for you. He's not going to improve the team in any kind of way, and it hurts from a fan perspective. It sucks. From a front office perspective, it makes much more sense, and it doesn't hurt as much. So from the fan, I'm bummed. I really like Nimmo. He's been a really good player and a popular player, and I like him a lot. But I see where they're going with this. But I just think back about like all the good times that we had with Nimmo, and him so proudly being part of that 2024 team. And I remember ESPN interviewing him, and they were talking about the fact that like, well, you're the longest tenured Met here, and you've been with the organization since you were 18, so 13 plus years later, like you're finally getting to the NLCS, and Nimmo was like ecstatic, and like he improved from such like a being like this like young kind of like awkward guy where he was just like this sort of like scrawny kid where growing up. And you put like a microphone in front of him and he was just kind of giving out like sort of like these like blasé like sort of like like well like that's the way it goes and so on. I was struck by like how much he'd improved in terms of talking to people, that when they were sticking the mics in his face, going into during that whole playoff run in 2024, he was giving like these very eloquent, smart responses, and he just improved a lot from really like every perspective, from not just from a playing perspective, but from a media training perspective, and from a from a leadership perspective. He became a leader for this team, and I think much more so in a way than someone like Alonso or McNeil. Maybe not Lindor, but I think also more than Soto. Like he was probably the guy that they listened to the most beyond Lindor, maybe Starling Marte as I think about it. But that's when you have that much weight in the clubhouse like he did, it's going to leave a little bit of a vacuum now, and there's going to be more of a probably like a focus on, I'm going to say like an unrelated consequence of this is probably going to be that Juan Soto, you're going to be asked to do more for this team, because you can't just be the guy who's like being like kind of like sullen and not really smiling, not really cracking jokes. You need to be a little bit of a leader here and be the guy who's kind of like talking to your teammates. Be present, be a leader here, because it can't fall all in Lindor to do that also. And if Starling Marte is not coming back either, then it's going to be a situation where you really have to look at it and say, okay, Soto, be more like Brandon Nimmo was. Be somebody who your teammates can look up to and respect. And so it will leave a hole in a number of ways, and in our hearts, certainly as Met fans, we will certainly miss him. I'm thinking now all about everything that he did for this team, and it's sentimental. I think I will very much miss him, and even though I've been for much of this episode just kind of like talking about, he's I can see the reasons for it, like why you do that trade. I'm also going to I can't detach myself from the fact that he was a really, really important player for this team in terms of everything they did for the fans and everything he did for the team. And I will miss him very much. So I'm gonna wrap it up now, because I got a little more emotional than I was expecting to. But it was fun to kind of revisit this. Again, I'm trying to get better at this, so just kind of bear with me. But I'm very glad to have returned. Glad that there's Met news going on. This is not really what I was looking forward to. I was looking forward to something else, maybe something where a player I wasn't quite as emotionally attached to was being traded. But it's so good to see the Mets getting involved in the hot stove and doing stuff. And I'm hoping there's more, because that will lead to more stuff that we get to talk about here. So I hope everyone has a wonderful night, and thank you very much, Brandon Nimmo. We will miss you. Thank you for listening to Mike's METS podcast. If you haven't already, please follow us on Spotify and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Leave a like and a comment, it helps so much. Finally, please follow our Twitter and Blue Sky pages. You can find us at Twitter at Mike's METS Pod, all one word, and on Blue Sky at Mike's METS Podcast.bsky.social. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day or evening, and let's go Mets.